you say that makes him a good leader, though?
It makes him a good negotiator.
Really?
It takes more than that to be a good leader, which I couldn't gauge based on what I know about him. But yeah, that's not enough information to really draw that conclusion.
All right, Damon. I know that you know a lot about leadership and leadership incompetence, and I'd like to explore a little bit more about it. You wrote a book, right?
Yeah, I
So,
did.
the Leadership Incompetence Index: Root Causes, Red Flags, and Remedies for Learning Leaders. All right. So, when did
Yep.
you start? When did you? Where the idea came from to write it?
Yeah. So I am passionate about leadership. So I read about it all the time. I think about it all the time. I study it. I look up, research journals to kind of figure out what is it like? How are people doing it? And then I kind of noticed if you're looking for, give me the X number of rules that leaders should follow, or the X number of traits that leaders should have. There's literally an inexhaustible list of do these 5 things, do these 12 things, have these characteristics in your personality. It's not real hard to find those things, which kind of got me to the point where I was like, well, those are literally just things that good people are, that normal people that we want to be around have all those characteristics. They don't mean anything. So I started studying a little more. And what I noticed was that it's much rarer to acknowledge the promulgation of things like incompetence in leadership. In other words, we would never give you a list of things to make you an incompetent leader. I don't want to say never. It's rare that we see that. So I started thinking about, instead of, well, we need a Facebook group for strong leaders, because that's what they all imply. All the social media groups and all that. You can join them and basically see memes all day about cute little quotes about how to be a great leader. I wanted to take it the opposite way and create a society for incompetent leaders, because that's what at least half of the population is, right? If it's a bell curve and excellent leaders are on the right and very, very bad leaders are on the left, the most of us are in the middle of that bell curve, and half of us are on the right and half of us are on the left. So we all have some form of incompetence. I think that's 100% true. We can't all be great leaders. It doesn't work like that. So having had that realization, I thought it would be kind of interesting to make a list of archetypes, incompetence archetypes, that most people will recognize in themselves and certainly in other leaders. And what I tried to do in the book is explain, first of all, that the incompetence, or the things that hold you back from being an awesome leader, those things are actually quite normal human behaviors or human characteristics. So it doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad person. It just means you're doing a thing a normal human would be expected to do. And so I take basically 11 of these archetypes, from kind of the most benign, the one that's going to cause the least amount of trouble, all the way to things like a psychopathic leader that isn't incompetent, but it has bad intentions for the business at the expense of their own sort of well-being or their own success. So that, in a nutshell, that's the book.
Wow, that's interesting. I never heard that approach before. Like, you have like archetypes, and you have like human traits that actually made you badly. Like, that's so. So I'd like to cover the archetypes. So you mentioned one of them is psychopaths, right? For sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I can cover a few. So if you just think of, if I gave you, it's technically 11 archetypes, but if
11.
I just said 1 to 10, and 10 is an evil person. That's your dark triad leader. That person exhibits the qualities of a narcissist,
Really?
a psychopath, and a Machiavellian. So very interested in their own well-being, very little empathy, and will manipulate people as much as possible, or as much as they need to, in order to get ahead. And those people are generally intelligent and can move a business forward. But what happens is they leave a trail of, of unhappy people behind them. So they're not great for the business, right? They're great. They're always out for themselves. You could take it all the way to the other end of the scale, like a 1 on the scale. You have something like a disorganized leader. And at the lower end of the scale, it's traits we can all see in ourselves, or most of us, right? Either you see it in yourselves or you see it in other people. But a disorganized leader, not necessarily uncommon. I'm one, for being honest. Has trouble staying on task. It's easily distracted, and that affects their leadership in ways that are frustrating to the team, but not necessarily bringing the team down completely. But in the book, I do cover if you're in these situations, here are the sort of behaviors you want to look for to determine if this leader or yourself is in fact displaying one of these propensities. So red flags, what to look out for, remedies, what to do about it. And then the rest of the chapter is things like the evolutionary basis for this behavior, the neuroscientific basis for this behavior, the personality basis for this behavior. So I try to explain it so that it's easily understandable, and nobody just assumes that leader or even yourself is a bad person because of these behaviors.
I mean, if you're a psychopath, I don't. You might be a bad
Okay.
person. I'm sorry.
With a few exceptions, yeah.
So, gosh, that's so. Let's say you are on the number 1 of the scale, right? You're not necessarily a bad person, but you're not also necessarily an amazing leader. What things you might do in order to improve, or things that you might not be doing that could benefit you?
Yeah, so if you're down on the bottom of that scale, you're the disorganized leader.
Disorganized. Yeah.
And again, I can speak from experience on this one because I'm a little bit disorganized. I'm kind of ADHD a little bit. So what you do is you first, the important thing to do as a leader is understand yourself. So it's way more important that you understand your own incompetencies, even if they're small, before you try to understand somebody else. Right? Because that's the tendency, is for us to be able to see those things in other people, but not see them in ourselves. So understanding yourself is really important. And that's, you can do personality assessments. There's a ton of leadership assessments you can take. Ask for feedback from your team, but you want to understand yourself, because if I know I'm a disorganized leader, then there are certainly things I can do to help me overcome that, or make it so that personality characteristic doesn't have negative impacts on my team. And one thing is, when I would take a new job, I would bring each person in and do kind of an initial counseling with them to sort of outline my expectations, get to know them, get to know their personality style. And ever since I started studying this for probably the last, 8 years, because I've done these assessments, I understand myself pretty well. I would say, look, here is the environment where I will excel. If I get to focus on these types of problems, A, I'll be happy. B, I'll put more energy into it. And C, I'm actually pretty good at it. So we will all excel by virtue of my problems being limited to this. And that's fair in the Army construct, because as a commander, you can't solve every problem in the organization. You get to focus on the big sort of up and out problems. But what I would also do is say, these are the situations in which I'm not all that effective. So if I'm good at creative, seeing the problem that nobody sees, coming up with unique solutions. I'm not good when you say, hey, your job is to follow this checklist all day and do these routine tasks and fill out these spreadsheets. I'm terrible at that. So I share that with my team. If you need me to do something like that, you're going to have to come in here and say, hey, sir, I need you to do this, and I'll do it. But if you send me one email saying, hey, I need you to do this within the next 5 days, I'm probably going to ignore that email, because it just doesn't register on my radar as something important until you tell me it's important. So I think the biggest thing you can do, and there's plenty of sort of self-help techniques on how to be more organized, whether it's post-it notes or jotting notes down or writing lipstick notes on your mirror or whatever you got to do. But the first thing is create conditions around you so that with the people that work around you to help you mitigate whatever that characteristic is.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense. That's and what I like is like you kind of you were still in the military, right? So while writing this book, you had very much like the military as a base or in mind, right? But they're totally applicable in a business environment. At least I imagine so, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. So my experience comes from the military, but like I said, a lot of my reading and research comes from academia, which studies, a very broad spectrum of organization types, industries. So yes, the lessons I can articulate are mostly from military lessons, but I know for a fact that the human beings that join the military are the same human beings that work out in the corporate world. So, because one of the things I study is the evolutionary roots of leadership. So we are all kind of built the same. So the characteristics and the propensities that we have and the personality traits that we have are very similar. I mean, it might look a little different in the military than it does in some other finance business or whatever, but at the end of the day, we're all humans, so we all have the same traits.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So one of the first things you can do in order to become a better leader is, well, understand yourself better. If you're an unorganized
Mhm.
leader, try to organize yourself better. Um, and you said you would fit into one of those leader types. I remember, and you tell me if this fits on the scale at all. I